Deary me, Daniel. New season, same old stuff. My God, I thought we weren't going to have to witness that kind of stuff again, but we did. How are you doing anyway? You got Mr. Happy t-shirt on today. Seems fitting.
I felt like, yeah, why am I letting these dickheads ruin my chill? I can't. I think that, I wouldn't say I didn't expect to see this stuff again, in that what we've seen in the last couple of weeks hasn't been sufficiently dissimilar. And we talked about this on the show last week and on the Tactics pod, that Liverpool are very good going forward. They have players that know how to score, and they make good decisions in attack. That's obviously not the only difference, but in a sense, it's the most important difference, I guess, because although their first goal came from a dreadful individual error, what then followed was a succession of good decisions, and they'd almost scored with a succession of good decisions on a couple of previous occasions, whereas United were getting into good positions in the first sort of 15 minutes, but making bad decisions. And we scored 2 goals in 3 games. One was deflection, and the other one was a kind of late goal. Not that they don't count, but like a late rush when you toss someone on and hope something happens, rather than representative of any good play exactly or plan.
Yeah.
And it obviously, Ugarte is going to come in, but expecting him to change the things that we've been seeing for the last 2 years just feels very unlikely. It might get better because he's better than Casemiro, in the same way that maybe Collier made it a bit better, but the same problems aside from that are there.
Well, they are, yes, and I guess we'll go into this in more depth on the Tactics pod, NQAT pod / no, patreon.com/NQAT if you want to check that one out. But it seemed to me there's been a slight tweak, and that last season we were going very, very direct to the wide players and hoping something would happen from there. And in terms of our build-up, and then in terms of the defensive structure, inconsistent, incoherent high press, big hole in midfield, pressure on the back four. The second part hasn't changed at all, right? We saw something better when Mount was in the team, and then it just disappeared as soon as Mount's not in the team. So I think we can say that's probably down to the individual rather than the system. And then in the build-up, just seems like we were trying to actually play through out the back through midfield and getting caught all of the time.
So I would say, but the thing about Mount is it's not, I don't think it is just the individual and not the system. It's because if the system relies on that individual to make it work, and he's not actually making the system work, he's making a little bit of it work better, then it feels to me like it is the system still.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And I think, I saw a diagram of our passing network, and you can see it on Twitter, and it's just so haphazard that what you see is when players are on the ball, they don't have anyone to play with, and it looks sort of like you've taken a bunch of Sabutio pieces in your hand, shaken them up like this, dropped them, they fall them wherever they fall them. Whereas you look at Liverpool's comparable passing network, and everyone's in the right place. Now, I don't buy this Arne Slot's been in the post 10 minutes and look what he's managed to do, because the idea that he didn't inherit a settled team that had a generational manager in charge of them before, so knew what to do, like that was obviously the case. And so what was required is not, how do I make this bullshit into a team, which is what Ten Hag arrived to. And of course it should be better than this now, but he also beat Liverpool in his third game. So again, it's not as straightforward as that. And I think it's necessary to assess this version of United relative to Arne Slot's Liverpool. I don't think that's helpful or sensible. But
no, sure.
we can look at Ten Hag's United in isolation and say that it's wank.
We can look. Arne Slot. I think I was talking to Tom last week, and we were fairly negative on Arne Slot and Liverpool, and saying, look, there's lots of reasons it could go wrong. Obviously, they've had a decent start, 3 out of 3, 2 inconsistent performances, and then this one was much better. But he's done the sensible thing which is not to completely shake the tree up, right? He's made some tweaks. They look like they're going to be a little less chaotic in possession, a little less direct, a little more control. But the defensive side of things, he's actually the only real tweak is to bring Gravenberch into midfield and be a little more structured in the centre of midfield. The press is still there, right? So he's taken the bare bones of a very good team under a manager who's obviously achieved much with sadly. And he's not done a David Moyes and tried to destroy it all. He's just trying to build on it. And so that's sensible enough. Ten Hag, and you're right, let's talk about United in isolation. He has now had 2 years and 3 months in the job, right? So the fact that we're talking about the same old problems, which are systemic and not just about players, is really deeply worrying and gets me thinking that he might not last past November or December, which is the traditional time for firing Manchester United managers in the post-Ferguson wilderness years. Yeah, third season, give him a boot, that kind of thing. So that's really worrying. Ugarte will come in, and he'll come into the same system, though, right? So we've got to hope that he really is this monster that can cover a hell of a lot of ground, because he's really going to have to.
And yet, that's not all that this is. We don't look like we scored 2 goals in 3 games. We look like we've got no idea what to do in order to score a goal. And that's aside from the structural issues at the back that Ugarte is meant to fix. And yeah, sure, he might retrieve the ball higher up the pitch. He might give us more security to go and attack. But again, it's going to be like he's providing a platform for your talented attackers to create something. And the way that football is these days, that tends not to be enough to win you enough games, because teams know what they're going to do, what you're going to do. They have really good attackers of their own. And it's become more of a systems game, I would say, than it ever has been before. And
yeah, or we're all more attuned to it, I guess. So, I mean, United's XG is like 1.7 something, but I don't think that really tells the story. We barely created a chance of note, except for those 2 really by the way, in a pretty dreadful performance from Marcus, 2 really good passes into Xerxes, who probably should have scored twice from them.
Yeah, should have scored the header, but
definitely should have scored the header. The second one sliding in may be more difficult.
We know he's not good in the air, which is neither's Ugarte, by the way, and he's going to come in for Casemiro, who actually does give us something in the air in the box. So we should soon be able to add conceding set-piece goals to our repertoire of excellences.
Deary me. I mean, we spent a long time talking about tactics and systems, but it's very hard to account for what was a mare for the ages from Casemiro. He pulled a Neville at West Brom. I mean, that was retirement stuff, pull up the sheets, put the horse out of its misery type stuff. I mean, that's, and I kind of thought, is that a big call from the manager to take him off at halftime, or is it actually a bit cowardly in a sense, because he's like, hey, point at the player, it's his fault, not mine, you know? And I had those 2 like kind of dissonance views there. But
I know what you mean, but I mean, he had to take him off for his own good. Imagine it gets worse, and also you can't look if you won't hook someone for that. For what with you hook them? And But he said afterwards that we made individual errors, but it isn't just about that. Bruno said it as well, and it's true that what it was the decisions that Liverpool made after that were just showing United how to attack. And it's not Casemiro's fault that there weren't any men at the back post, and there were 2 of them. Yeah, and Mazraoui, he was kind of caught upfield, but I didn't really feel like he was busting his ass to return. And even if you don't get there, if they know that you're racing back and they can sense you coming, then it puts them under a bit of pressure. And instead, the only pressure they had was from each other. And I think also, Szoboszlai, he's not a brilliant player. Gravenberch, I thought, is play really well, not a brilliant player. McAllister, not a brilliant player. But the way that they had been sent out to play, and I think also what was very obvious was the difference in physicality. And that, again, is, I mean, it is a problem for us. And Maynard is a beautiful footballer in tight spaces, needs to get better in big spaces, but also alongside Bruno, then that is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that you've signed is not a beast in that way. Like he's quick, and he's quite tall, but it's not like he's not like Gravenberch, I don't think, in the way that he can bring the ball forward and he doesn't want really. I mean, he's not bad bringing the ball forward, Ugarte, but him getting into that team is not suddenly going to mean that you can have a single pivot. And whether it works in a double pivot with Mania, I'm not sure, because also Ugarte is there to try and sniff the ball out further forward. But then how's he going to get back? And you're just going to be left with the same situation where you're short-handed at the back and you can't really do that much about it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Mania will have to be released to go forward, and I mean, he does pull off a lot of interceptions. I mean, there are some challenges with Manu. I mean, as you said, he needs to get better with his passing range, and there's plenty of time left in his career to improve. He's still 19 and has not yet had a full season as a player, so that definitely needs to get better. His defensive positioning, not always great, caught out, like having to cover spaces. We'll see how that changes when he's got someone who is much better defensively alongside him. And I suspect he'll be the 8 trying to link play, and Ugarte will be cleaning up the mess. How they fit in a system, which I don't know whether, again, let's go into more depth on the tactics show, but I don't know if we're going to persist with this idea of trying to build through the middle. Now we've got the Ajax 2019 defence, at least most of it. Well, I suspect we may end up going to what we did in the last 15 minutes of that game, which is hoofing it long. Anyway, it's very hard not to get super negative after a defeat like that. I mean, we have seen it a lot of times before, and I guess we could have a bit of ennui about it as a result. But it feels like the world has caved in because we've been smashed by Liverpool at Old Trafford once again, right? And it seems like a pattern, a feature, not a bug of the Ten Hag regime. And that's deeply concerning, isn't it? How do we turn this around? And I think, as I said, several times, it's not like Ten Hag, just because he got a new contract, gets a clean slate with the fans. That's not going to happen, right? The jeering at halftime at the end of the game was because we remember the 20-odd defeats last season, and we're looking for signs of change.
Yeah, I mean, we also know that he only stayed in the job if one of the two things hadn't have happened, i.e., if we hadn't have won the cup, he'd have got fired. And if there'd have been a suitable successor, he'd also have got fired. And the only reason he stayed in the job was one game and the absence of anyone they were certain would be better. Mm-hmm. I mean, increasingly, this is terrifying. And you know what I'm going to say here, I think. Did they keep him knowing that there was someone who wasn't really available at the start of the season, but if things went wrong, would basically be available whenever we wanted them?
You're talking about Rude, right? It's Rude you're talking about.
Yeah. So it could easily. I can't for the life of me grasp how any sentient being, never mind like the ruthless arseholes that work for Ineos, which presumably what they are, and we know that Radcliffe is at the very least, and I can't say.
And so Dave Brailsford.
I was about to say I can't say I particularly appreciate anything with Dave Brailsford necessarily. We know who are they really looking at this, thinking, yeah, Southgate will sort this.
I mean, I hope not. I hope you'd hope there. I mean, I know Dan Ashworth worked with him and apparently loves him. You'd hope Barada, now being the CEO, I mean, if he is the real CEO and it's not Ratcliffe there in the stands, would, having worked with Guardiola, would go, yeah, Southgate's not that. You'd hope, right? But it is, and I know I don't want to overreact, right, based on one result, but it's also based on 2 years, right? And so I don't want to go, got to bin Ten Hag, because the time to have done that would have been in the summer, make the change, clear the decks. But what they decided to do is keep Ten Hag and give him more support. Given the players he wanted, 5 of them, it's a pretty strong transfer window, but as good as you can get, really. And then a whole bunch of new coaches to support him in building something new. But if it looks the same over and over again, you start to worry, don't you? Like, if you weren't already.
I didn't think that Ten Hag was going to sort this out. I don't think it now. I'd fire him today if I could. I'm just like, I feel like a performance like that. And I understand some of what he says, that there was not that much difference in the XG, which you can laugh at the point, but it is like, that is one of the ways we assess football matches now. And this is one of the pros do it. So we'd be silly not to look at that too.
Sure.
There wasn't that much difference in the XG, but there was a massive fucking difference in what a football team is meant to look like.
Well, there's a massive difference in the actual G.
Yes.
Without wanting to sound like an old man shouting at clouds, the G counts.
The G does count, but you sometimes, football being the kind of game that it is, like when you're trying to assess whether a manager should stay or whether he's doing a good job, then you wouldn't necessarily say, well, we lost that game because let's say you lose it to 3 counter-attacks, let's say, and you play well and you pepper the goal. And then you would say, okay, but that wasn't what that game was. And you look at the game and you say that the difference between the sides was very significant and did not reflect, and the more significant, I would say, than the difference in ability between the sides. And again, like, why did you take Garnacho off to bring Ahmad on? I don't feel like I understood that change. And that's the thing, is it's not even like when Klopp's team were at their peak, then you might say, we didn't say okay, but you there were certain games before Liverpool, but we played Liverpool where we sort of knew we were getting a kicking, right? I don't feel like this was one of them, and yet we still get put over the knee. And how can you have that? And there are individual issues. Martinez started the season playing out his arse. And we mustn't forget that just as we like him, and he's been good until this point. He has not been good this season. The goalkeeper can't save shit. And I look at the goals, and it's not obviously he couldn't get anywhere near the first one. The second one, do I think a proper good goalkeeper stops that? Yeah, maybe. And it's that he saves almost nothing, really. And the manager thought he was worth a lot of money. And yet the reason we bought him, a goalkeeper who we bought not for his ability to save stuff, which again, like, I sound old, but I understand the way the modern game is, but
sure.
Still, like, that crucial thing, can you stop the ball going in your net? He cannot.
No, I mean, just to pick up on a few of those points, I mean, the weird thing about Onana is we bought him for his passing range and then had him hoof the ball long. Absolutely mental. And by the way, David De Gea started the season pretty well with Fiorentina, even saved a penalty the other night.
Right, obviously we know that part of the situation here is us. We're a virus of some description.
Sure.
Was the reverse of Midas. Sadim. We have the Sadim touch. Everything we touch turns to shit.
Yes, well, that is very true. Us being the club, of course, not you and me. It's not. But by the way, just on the XG point, I was just checking it up while you were talking about it because, in my mind, I thought this was true. The 0.1 of our 1.5 XG was the 2 Xerxes chances, both created by Marcus Rashford, and the second one has a really high XG because it's so close to goal and only the goalkeeper to beat. Perhaps there's some mitigation there. And the other chance of any kind of note was Lissandro Martinez doing an overhead when the game was already put to bed. So, I mean, I just he's saying that, but I also kind of don't believe it. It's like, I don't think we actually, I mean, it's 2 brilliant balls by Marcus Rashford. He played out of his arse for most of the rest of the game.
Well, I just seen that Ten Hag when it was suggested to him in the press conference that it was on him, not the players. He said, "You are sure?" I don't think so. He wouldn't win trophies like he did and to beat big opponents. I'm sorry for you. After City, we won the most trophies. I'm sorry for you. And I don't think there's no truth in that, but I do also feel like the reason we won the cup, particularly last season, was more we've got some good players. And again, I'm saying he's not got nothing to do with that. Like, he's helped bring Garnacho through, he's helped bring Mane through. But winning cup competitions like we've had. We the first year where we won the League Cup, we had a really nice draw. And then in the cup this time, I mean, we almost lost to Coventry. We almost lost to Coventry, and we produced a performance for the ages in the final. Of course, that's partly to do with the manager, but you can't replicate that performance in every game, and you have to. And because in that game, we had pretty much every player that United had turned in a 7 out of 10 or above. That doesn't happen that often, so you need to find another way. And the way you find another way is there. What I said wouldn't work before. I'm sort of going to revise that. If you think, as I said before, that you can't win football matches with just some good attackers doing enough, but actually, I don't think that's quite right if you defend properly. And we didn't defend that badly. It's more that you give the ball away, and every time you do it, they seem to have an overload. Yeah, and that's a structural thing. And we've seen Fergie basically. Fergie won a couple of leagues towards the end, really without a midfield. And I'm not sure he'd get away with that now. He wouldn't, in fact. But then you could, because you still had a defence that knew what to do, that wouldn't just give shit away. And someone would get you a goal, and if they didn't, then you had loads of wingers on the bench, basically wingers and strikers that would do something to get you that goal. But you have to make that work. You have to defend properly.
Yep. It's been Mourinho's philosophy, hasn't it? I mean, give forward players attacking freedom, and then make sure you have a defensive base. Now, maybe that doesn't work anymore, and he's out of touch, clearly, but for what, most of his career did work. I think Ten Hag is basically fundamentally wrong. And like, he's playing into kind of a bit of fan service there. We love those trophies and those big moments, and it matters. But keeping a manager or selecting a manager on the basis of one game, when I think the reporting on this is now that the players went to him after Crystal Palace and said, this isn't working. And Mitchell van der Gaag and Steve McLaren had a word, and they convinced him to change, right? And it feels like we've gone backwards, right? There wasn't a team selected today for a specific occasion. So Liverpool last season in the Cup, City in the Cup final, special system for the occasion. Of course that matters, but we're going to judge the quality of this team, partly on trophies, but mostly on the competitive nature of the team against all their peers over the course of the season when you play everyone home and away in a league format. And we're absolutely dreadful last season. And based on data, we outperformed our dreadfulness, right, in coming 8th. and so, I always keep coming back to that because I kind of think, acceptable is top 4 trophy, close to trophy, something like that, isn't it? Something like that. But we might have moved forward with our set of players and still not be able to get there. And if the system hasn't moved forward and the manager hasn't, I think there's zero chance we get there.
Yeah, acceptable is progress where you can see. And I think my main problem with Ten Hag has been, as we've kind of realised what he wants to do, that I don't see that his end point is going to be enough to challenge for the big pots, never mind win them. Like, if you manage to somehow sneak into the Champions League, you could probably challenge for that with a bit of luck because you have enough good players to beat anyone on a good day. But that rarely happens. And
what is the end point?
Yeah,
what is the end point?
Right, and I'll come to that in a second. But just to go back to what you say about the cup, he did do something specific for that game, but you don't challenge for the big pots by doing that. You challenge for the big pots by basically doing the same thing more or less in every game, with a few little tweaks. So Liverpool are going to play the same way now. They specifically ganged up on Casemiro today, and because they knew that he'd get the ball and he might well be isolated. He loves a Hollywood pass. That's basically what he does these days. So there's a little thing that they were doing, but in possession, they're not doing that. They're doing the same thing that they always do. And it's that. So coming up with a good plan to win that cup final, listen, we will all take that day to our graves. I'll be telling my grandchildren about that day. And I'm very grateful that we got it, but I didn't sit there thinking if we could do this in every game, then we'll do anything good, because I don't think that's true. If we can show that application in every game, if the players can produce that level of performance in every game, then we can be better. But that way of playing is not going to get you where you want to get to, and someone needs to come up with something better. So what does he want? He wants high recoveries. And the problem with getting those high recoveries is, in order to get the high recoveries, you need the defensive line to be much higher than it was, not camped on the edge again. And there's no Maguire to blame it on this time. Not sure whose fault it is, whether it's De Ligt or can we presume and Martinez have both understand how to organise defence. Both of those guys, and none is behind them. We don't actually know why that's the case, whether it's instruction, whether it's nervousness, whatever it is. But you can't press high and defend on the edge of the box. We know that. I'm not sure. Yeah.
42 yards, I think, was the average defensive height, and it's quite significantly deeper than Liverpool's, with about the same possession. So that tells you that is the system they're playing. It was the system last season. High recoveries. If it doesn't work, or if it's bypassed, or if certain players in the side don't really want to join the press, Xerxes was a trigger for the press today, then you get the same problem of a midfield that has disappeared and Liverpool being able to run through it. Before the game, Arne Slot in his pre-match interview was asked, what has changed with Manchester United? And he said, they're trying to press with a 9-10, right? And sometimes 7-11 join in. That's just the way he phrased it. The wingers, he corrected.
The Dutch love that. They love a numbered by position.
Yeah. But what he means is Bruno and Mount, who started the season as 9-10, the trigger for the press, mainly Mount. Bruno joins in. Alongside Mount, he's less a headless chicken. And you hope the wingers join in too. In this game, it was Xerxes on his own. And that was bypassed fairly easily by Liverpool. I haven't seen how many high recoveries we got, but I bet it's not many. And so Liverpool had a pretty easy time of it. Again, man.
How does Diogo Jota look scouse?
It's just the air. You turn up in Liverpool and you look scouse.
It's remarkable, really. I don't know how that works, but yeah, I'd like an answer to that question. But yeah, I mean, I guess you've given me one. But anything? I mean, I'm just trying to think of that. Any positives there?
No.
Collier do all right?
He did all right. Yeah, although he played further forward. He played slightly more Miney went to the deep position on the right side of midfield, and Collier went to the more attacking position on the left side. So he's all right. I don't think he's our solution, but you hope he develops enough that he's an option, because really we needed two defensive midfielders in the summer and we couldn't afford it. Or we did our business, business late enough that we couldn't get another one in.
Or we prioritised other positions.
Yeah.
I mean, and I wanted another centre back, and obviously Yoro's injured, so it's extremely lucky we've got one. But I don't think I would have bought one until I had my midfield sorted, because when I watch this team, that is ultimately what I think. I know that Maguire's not good enough, but he's more serviceable than Casemiro. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure, in the summer, I'm wanting to make sure that I don't have to take Casemiro as in the 6. Like, he's someone who I might use as an option in the 8 because we haven't got rid of him.
Yep.
But I'm trying to make sure that, I mean, when we still have McTominay, I don't have to rely on either of those two, because that has much greater impact on the way that we're able to play than Maguire, even though I'd love not to have Maguire. And that's what they prioritise. And then you could say, well, they didn't want to buy two of those players, because I don't think they're convinced by Ugarte either, because they weren't. Part of it, I understand, is we're not going to overpay players anymore. But if Ugarte was better than he is, or if they were more sure about him than they are, then they might have bought him sooner for less, just to make sure that they had him. And my guess would be that they think they might have to go back into the market next summer and buy the best player that they can, having allowed potential targets to have another year to see who that should be. And then that's the point, that they have two players who aren't Casemiro for that position, and they hope to get rid of Casemiro at the same time.
Yeah.
But
Well, with Sancho off the books, Varane off the books, Eriksen will leave next summer since he didn't this summer. Casemiro will be gone one way or another. They have there's 17 outgoings I think this summer, if you include Sancho in that. They've got rid of a huge amount of headroom on the PSR, just a huge amount. If they could get rid of Anthony as well, that would be another massive benefit financially, that is. And so they will be able to spend quite a bit of money next season. Now, of course, it would depend on this season's performance and revenue from the greatly expanded Europa League and whether United can get into the Champions League. Obviously, it doesn't. After 3 games, it doesn't look very likely. 35 more to go, so we won't panic there.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to sort that. In theory, I wouldn't. If we had a manager that I trusted, I wouldn't be screwing about that at all. We know that City and Arsenal are going to finish first and second. Feels like there's a good chance that Liverpool are going to finish third.
Yeah,
the teams with whom we're scrapping for fourth, we should be better than them, really.
How much do you think United will spend on Adam Wharton next summer? Is it 100 million? I guess it depends on his progress, doesn't it? But, yeah.
It does. I mean, it depends on his options.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of clubs that are in for him, and there's a strong chance that all those clubs will be in a better situation than United. Doesn't mean that the pull of United isn't strong and does sometimes override that, but there's going to have to be something's going to have to change for us to I would suggest for us to be able to sign him, either a change of manager and things change, or if it's dreadful next summer, then till next summer and Ten Hag stays in the job, then a manager someone wants to play for, because shit stinks. And we were able to probably get players perhaps this summer, like Euro say, because Ineos coming in made people think, do you know what? It was toxic, but they won the cup. They're spending some money. They're starting to organise properly. I can entrust my career to these people.
Yeah.
But if it's still dreadful, then signing someone of Wharton's calibre and desirability might be something that is beyond us. But it's going to need to be someone.
Yeah. For sure. Well, Manchester United 2, also known as OGC Nice, won 4-1 today, so perhaps we can get their manager.
Oh, buzzing for that.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing, is like, as I said, I would fire Ten Hag now because it's enough. And it feels like he's not going to be the answer. And if he isn't, then I want someone who is as soon as possible. But who is that? Do you just give Van Nistelrooy the job and hope that he does something?
Maybe. I mean, he has a perfectly manicured beard. I'm always, every time I look at him, I'm like, you like look after these cheeks super well. Like he's got like the perfect line. And the other thing about his beard that I always think is thick.
It's good coverage.
It's like, well, it's not just, it's thick. It's like, I've always had a beard aged about 11, but it's
were you the guy in the changing room?
Pretty much.
Look at this, lads.
It's just dense. Anyway, that's. I'm not sure if he's a good coach or not. Let's assume he is. Look, there are no signs for me yet that something has changed with Ten Hag. In fact, all the evidence seems to point to basically the same. Right, so if it's basically the same with a few better players, you're like, okay, we've got a better squad. We should do better than last season. But it was so dreadful last season that it has to be a lot better. And the thing is, we love the cups, but I don't buy it as a barometer for development of the team, right?
It can be. It can be. But what we've actually seen is last season's cup, the feel-good factor's gone.
Yeah.
Like, we'd hoped that it would keep us going, and it did probably through the summer, but eventually, or not even eventually, very quickly, you have to do something on the pitch, and we haven't. And almost all our players have started the season in horrible form. And then we could say, well, Euros, no pre-season, and that'd be true in some way. But we're also seeing other teams where that isn't a problem. And Ten Hag said, well, he thinks maybe Liverpool are a bit further ahead along with some things. And I think they are maybe further ahead with the way they want to play because, as I said, like they've been drilled by a brilliant manager. But our guys have been drilled by a not brilliant manager. And Manchester United must have a brilliant manager. And it doesn't feel like he is that. And so drawing attention to other clubs being further along, why? What are you doing?
Okay.
Like, it's not like, like McAllister was involved in the Copa America. A lot of their players were at the Euros, and we're seeing something. We're seeing something very different, and it's not acceptable for it to look like this after this amount of time. It just isn't. It doesn't matter what the players are. In that, you watch Tottenham play, right, and you see them concede goals because of the way that Postecoglou wants them to play. I don't think playing this way is sustainable for a team that wants to win the league, if that is even Spurs' ambition. But I'm not confused as to what they're trying to do.
Not at all. I mean, it's really clear.
And
in fact,
sorry, just to finish. The problem with their system is that it's spacing behind, right?
Yeah.
But they don't. You don't watch them thinking, when's their next chance going to come from?
No. Right.
And this way of playing has this one very particular problem with it is the spacing behind, I think. But when you watch them build the play, when you watch them move the ball about, it looks better than what United are doing with worse players.
Yeah, very true. I was so rudely interrupting you. The point I was going to make is, which team or which manager do you not know the identity of? And I know it's an overused word, or the system and way of playing. Which team amongst the, I don't know, let's say top 8 are we unclear about? Right. So Pep, you know how they want to play. Arteta, you know how he wants to play. Arne Slot, we know how he wants to play. It'll be an evolution from the way that Klopp played. Postecoglou, we know how he wants to play. Maresca, we have a very good idea, I think. I mean, there's a big question mark over that. Eddie Howe, we know exactly how Newcastle want to play. Right? The point being is, amongst the teams challenging for European places, it is really only Ten Hag and Manchester United that we're going, what is this team? And how are we expected to play? What are we, like, even if it was Mourinho-esque and we hated it, right? Even if it was parking the bus, anti-football every game, at least we'd go, oh yeah, we know what he's trying to do. We might hate it.
And you mentioned Newcastle. The thing I think about Newcastle and Villa is that whatever else goes on, and Arsenal, it'll be physical. It'll be hard. You'll have to suffer if you want to beat them. And if you want to play them, it'll be hard.
Yep.
And that isn't the case with us. It's not hard. Like it's not a physical contest. And those are things that make opponents, before they come, worry about coming to play you. And while they're doing it, they make playing you is hard. And Liverpool didn't have to struggle, really. They had a difficult 10 minutes at the beginning. But then as soon as they had scored the goal that was disallowed, they pretty much, I wouldn't say exactly that they controlled the game, but they looked much, much more dangerous, much, much more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, because it was perhaps a more chaotic game than Arne Slot would have wanted, right? More of a cup style game with a lot of errors in it.
Well, I guess that's United's thing, maybe.
That is, yeah.
If you play them, there will be some chaos, and they have players that can hurt you. And this is maybe why they did well against Klopp's Liverpool, because they played quite a bit of a risky style in that they left a lot of space behind, which is exactly what this version of United want, because they have players that can exploit that if you can get them on the ball. But that's not really a tactic. That's taking advantage of a glitch in your opponent's system rather than this is what our system is and we're going to impose that on you.
Also lost 7-0, 5-0 and now 3-0 to...
there was a 4-0 as well.
Was there a 4-0? Was it a 4-0?
No, there was a 5-0 at Old Trafford.
It was 5-0, yeah, a 4-0,
and a
7-0, and a 3-0. Fuck me. I mean, those 4 games alone would, if this was medieval times, this would have you strung up over a branch, wouldn't it? But a simple P45 would have done just on those 4. All right. Before we go, should we do a quick retrospective on the transfer window? First, give us your rating out of 10. And
I can't.
What did we?
I can't do it till I've seen them play, and I haven't seen them play enough for me to be able.
True. Fair enough.
To be able to say how good I think they are. Well, to give it a number, I think that we needed another striker. Yeah. I like aspects of what I've seen of Xerxes. I wonder if we can get him involved in the game more, which are not just us finding him with the ball, but him putting himself about. Yeah. And he doesn't look live, does he?
No, he doesn't look like a striker as such, and I think he's the shadow striker, isn't he? It'll be interesting to see what he means.
I said before that I thought he would actually take Højlund's place because I felt like he was a better way of getting more out of the players that we've got, because he'd drop into midfield and make an extra player, and he'd help Garnacho and Rashford score goals. But we haven't seen it. We've seen a little bit of it. We've seen some nice touches and we saw a nice finish. I mean, without him, we'd be in an even worse state. So there is that. And we didn't need another striker, and he's a different option. So I like the signing, but we have to wait and see about the quality. But he's meant to be a good player, so that's him. De Ligt is not the kind of player I would have bought. I guess we hope that the mentality will override the fact that he's not quite the right kind of player. And I don't think anyone really thinks he's the right kind of player. It's more about, is the package right overall?
It was good for parts of today.
Yeah. I mean, and that challenge where he plows through, who is it? Diaz was one of my highlights, I guess. But yeah, he played quite well in the first half of this, but you could see what he'd bring. Yeah. I worry that what he brings is not what the team needs from a centre back, because we want to defend high. We want expansive passing, and he can do a bit of both, but probably not enough of either. So that's him.
Yoro, we only saw a little bit in pre-season before he got injured. There's bits of it. I mean, recovery pace, outstanding.
Yoro, Yoro, if he can, Yoro feels like, if assuming everything's like physically okay with him, we'll be saying that was a good purchase.
Managerial, I think we've already seen the best and worst of him. I mean, he's so comfortable in possession and looks like an actually competent right back. And then he went wandering a little bit for one of Liverpool's goals today, and it's the kind of thing that has been present in his game.
But again, that feels almost structural, that the fullbacks are both going high. And I don't really feel like you can afford to do that when you've got the Casemiro midfield and the defence.
Yeah.
And the defence that we have. So I mean, we'll see with all of these, and ultimately they're all the players, though also responsible for what we're seeing, are being hindered by the system.
True. And then on our outgoings, I mean, Casemiro off the books is great. It's they're paying most of his wages this season, and then there's an obligation to buy if he.
Who do you mean, Sancho?
Sancho. Most of his wages this season, which gets almost 15 million off the books, and although that's counted by the 15 million we have PSR costs we have, and then to get 20 to 25 million, depending on where Chelsea finish next season. Will be above his PSR cost next season. So it's not a disaster financially. Obviously, it's not great, and there's been a massive cost to him. But just getting him out of the club, the joy with which he at like 11:01 p.m. turned his Twitter to Chelsea Blue and then put out this statement going, "My heroes growing up were Didier Drogba and Frank Lampard." I'm like, the petty fan in me is like, good riddance. Never want to see this player again. And then just got massive amounts of wages off the books with releasing players or selling players. And it is creating the opportunity for a big window next summer. Yeah,
it's not enough. Like everything else has to be right or nearer to right. And it feels like there's no chance that Ten Hag is going to be manager at the start of next season.
Feels like it. We are 3 games into the season, but it definitely feels like it. Yeah.
I mean, I would have put money on it before we'd seen anything this season as well. Yeah. I mean, I would have fired him not in the summer. I would have fired him before that, if I'm honest. I would have fired him in the summer. I understand why they didn't, and I thought, okay, let's see.
Yep.
and we're seeing. And I guess I had planned to do more seeing than we are, but I also expected that more to have changed than has, or at least not. I wouldn't say expected. Felt like more needed to change than has in order for this to have any chance of working.
I mean, I do think. I know we want everything possible. So, in terms of the transfer window, 5 in, I think it was 17 players out, includes some younger players who just let the contracts run down and stuff like that. But 17 players out, some of those deals could have significant financial benefits later down the line with big sell-on clauses. Mason Greenwood, for example, has already scored a shit ton of goals in the Farmers League in France, which he will do. I think playing in a De Zerbi system, he's going to score a lot of goals, and that could have a great financial benefit for us later down the line. So I think they did about as much as possible. Now, whether it's the right choices of players, that they definitely picked players for Ten Hag. This is kind of worried. They picked players for Ten Hag and coaches for Ten Hag as well. And if he's gone, it's always the risk, isn't it? He is now. This is now very much his team, right? There are, I think someone said 6 players left plus Lindelof, so 7, so 6 he trusts and one other he clearly
with
doesn't.
And with creatives, is I expect 4 for him.
Yeah, basically.
Masraoui, De Ligt, and Onana.
We just
Martinez.
need that, and Martinez. We just need Tagliafico, and then we can recreate the whole thing. Yeah,
right. And so they have backed him this summer, and I don't think that patience will be copious.
No, and why should it be? I mean, Ratcliffe keeps talking about walking to the right decision, not running to the wrong one. Okay, well, they've walked to a decision. We'll find out whether it's the right one or not. But also, he's a ruthless bastard. He's fired 250 people at United. I hear that resources are so thin that they're fighting for resources internally. It's turned into the Game of Thrones, and that the atmosphere inside the club is fairly toxic as a result. That's amongst the non-playing staff. And he's been completely ruthless with his business outside of football and sport. Brailsford's a toxic, overseen, let's not say he is, but has overseen an absolute toxic mess at the cycling team. So there's a bunch of ruthless bastards that he's got working for him as well. Are we saying that the only area in which he's not going to be ruthless is the manager of Manchester United, the most important person at the club? I find it hard to believe, and I feel like Ten Hag was saved by the takeover 1 and the cup final, the emotional response to it 2, and then 3, they couldn't find someone they really wanted. But as soon as they do find someone they really want, he's gone.
Agree. Yeah, agree. I don't know who that will be. And as I said, we don't know if Arne Slot really is any use, but he's someone they might have been able to get, for example, last summer when we said there was no one available.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't know.
Dearie me.
Yeah, it's grim, Edwards.
It is very grim. Great. Awesome. Upbeat. We've got Southampton next weekend. I guess we'll do a preview in midweek.
It's not next weekend.
Oh, it's after the international break.
We've got 2 weeks, and it's kind of like, gosh, I was bitching about 2 weeks of no United last week or whatever it was. I want to watch them play, and it is not what you need international week now. And it's a problem with the football calendar in that you have to have international football, and in order to have your World Cup and your European Championships of this world, you have to have other international football matches, but it feels ridiculous that the season is stopping for nonsense.
Well, in which case the negativity surrounding Manchester United will continue for at least another 2 weeks.
You never want to be the team that loses in embarrassing fashion just before international week.
It feels like that's happened before. And before we go, reaction to the Europa League draw. I think I said on the short pod, I don't like the format. We'll see whether it turns into what UEFA say it will do, which is more jeopardy, more competition. Maybe it's a hell of a lot of games. United will have to be really. I'm not sure there is. Maybe there's few edge cases where around like fighting for that 8th place, because 8 teams definitely go through out of 36. So there may be a bit of jeopardy fighting for that 8th place. And I guess at the bottom between like the bottom, so it's 9 through 24 get into a playoff. So 8 plus 16, 24 teams go through to some other next stage. And then the rest of them, 12 do not.
It will mean more games. It's more games between the better sides, I guess, definitely in the Champions League. But whether there's anything riding on them,
it's hard to say at this moment.
It doesn't feel likely.
And of United's draw, quite a few teams we've never played before, which is interesting, right? I mean, that's something new. So we've I guess.
I mean, Rangers coming to Manchester again, which I don't think anyone will want that.
Please, Rangers fans, do not destroy Piccadilly Gardens again. And going back to Ten Hag's Twente come to us, don't they? It's Ten Hag's old team. He used to play for them.
Probably signed a few players while they're there.
Yeah. Steaua Bucharest, don't think we've ever played them. That'll be interesting. Or FCSB, as they're now called. And then a couple of...
Whose banner our lovely rivals Liverpool were flying after Hillsborough. Sorry, not after Heysel.
Right.
Because Heysel meant that Everton didn't go into the Champions League, into the European Cup as it was then, because obviously English clubs got banned. Bucharest win the first final, and obviously they're a side that Everton fancied themselves to beat. So Liverpool on the Kop, there was a Steaua Bucharesti banner.
Deary me.
Yeah.
Top stuff. That is. And then reunion with Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, it's just the Europa League group stage is some of the worst shit going.
So, it really is, and we get 8 games now.
So getting more of it doesn't feel, it's like asking for seconds of your shit sandwich, and I don't really feel the need for that.
Daniel, you have to eat the shit sandwich and enjoy it if you finish 8th in the Premier League.
Twice.
That's what you have to do.
Twice! Yeah. Okay, I've got to go back to the tennis.
All right. We will leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Daniel can go back to the tennis. Were you punished with Formula One earlier today?
No. I'm tennis. During the US Open, the majors, I'm tennis usually.
Well, enjoy that. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you in midweek. All right. Bye now.
Peace.